Yeah, it's obviously been extremely different. A lot of time on my hands. It's one of those times where you never really anticipate anything like this happening, and then going into like last year we didn't finish until June, so this year is a lot different where the summer is extended and obviously with quarantine and nothing being open, it's been different. It's trying to stay active as much as possible and watching a lot of Netflix shows and movies and trying to get out for walks and just got a set of rollerblades set up today. So I was out there doing that. And a lot of it is just trying to keep as busy as possible and not try to go too crazy.
I want to talk about this past season for a little bit. I mean, I know it might feel like maybe the got robbed of a chance to contend for that title, but do your best, James, to try and compare where this current year's team was going compared to maybe where we were, this time last year, because call me crazy, but it started to feel a lot like the special vibe we had going last year too.
Yeah, I mean, when you go into a season, you don't know what to expect because there's a lot of new players and faces coming in, and obviously speaking with Snowy in the summertime and to when I signed was kind of get the same feeling that the team is going to be good again this year. We're going to have a lot of pieces come down from the Marlies and from the Maple Leafs, and team's dynamic is going to be a tad bit different with obviously our forwards are still going to be skilled and fast, but our D in stature and weight really shrunk up quite a bit. But when you look at our back end, there was a lot of guys that were like highly skilled. That,
so much skill.
We didn't spend a lot of time in our zone because guys were that quick at making the first pass and getting up the ice. So our dynamic was a little bit different, but the culture kind of stayed the same, and our values of the way we did things. And you start at the start of the year and guys are still getting to know each other, and you really can't complain on how things went. Like we were doing well, and then we end up signing Parker, and he was kind of a diamond in the rough. You find him, he was playing men's league hockey last year, and then he comes in and he's an absolute stud and earns himself an AHL contract. And
a lot like Bartag did the year before, came in on a coast deal. He was even more of a diamond in the rough than Gahagan was, but just to liken it back to last year. But please continue. Just wanted to make that point.
Very, very similar. And then it's you go on that massive home winning record, and at the time you don't really pay much attention to it. I think we got to I want to say 14 games or something before it even registered in anybody's mind. And to be so successful at home and make this a hard place to come play was a key piece to our success. And then you start to build, and we go to Florida, and it kind of it's a test. We didn't do as well as we planned, but you get into the Jacksonville game and we really took over. And then after that, I felt that we were we needed that little bit of adversity to kind of kick us in the butt to say, what, you're not an invincible team. There are teams that can work, and if you hit a hot goalie, that it's hard to win in this league. And I think how the guys responded, and that was something that was encouraging. And then you're getting into the crunch time just before playoffs, and then things end abruptly. It was a weird situation where you don't get all the answers of it's a lot easier going into off season when you're winning. Obviously you want to become the top of the top. And last year we were able to do that, and it's an amazing feeling. But even, you lose, you still have a bit of closure on, well, this is where we stood. Right. You have some answers to where your season was and what needed to be worked on. But for us, it kind of, it got held up short, and it's frustrating. It's sad. There's a lot of emotions that come with it, knowing how much potential we had going into the postseason, and the mindset of the team and the players who were here, that we definitely had a good opportunity to potentially go back to back.
There, what's at the front of your Netflix most recently played? What are you watching?
I just finished the Last Dance, the Michael Jordan.
Oh yeah, okay. What do you think?
So I didn't. Obviously, about Michael Jordan and how great he was, but I didn't really understand it to the whole aspect of how he started and when he retired and came back. And so it's been a really interesting documentary. I actually started it. It might have been yesterday or the day before, and I crushed all 6 episodes in one day, one sitting. I just couldn't stop watching. So now I'm excited for Monday for the next 2 to be released. And,
it's the only reason I know what day of the week it is. It's like, oh snap, today's Last Dance day, let's go. And the casting, we don't have to talk the whole time about the Last Dance, but the whole Scottie Pippen contract thing, had no idea. Dennis Rodman, him going to Vegas in the middle. I'm not sure. Do you think that would fly with Snowy if you had to call him up and say, Snowy, I need 48 hours. Me and the boys, we're going to Vegas. What do you think Snowy's going to say?
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be so free easy going now. It's pretty wild that, he goes in, he says, I want 5 days, and they're like, we'll give you 48 hours. And then after 48 hours, nobody could still find him. And just a wild human. But you know what? When he got on the court, he was a battler. And when it came time for him to play, he played. So, I mean, you can't fault a guy for that. He could talk the talk, but he could walk the walk at the same time.
Indulge me with this question. Who in our division would have, say, provided the toughest test? Those are the teams we see the most often. There were spurts where Maine was giving us real tough games. Reading was a 500 series all year. Everyone hates playing Brampton. What do you make of the division, and who was going to be the biggest thorn in the side, you think?
This year was kind of different because, last year was Brampton for us because we played them so often. But, if you looked at our schedule this year, we didn't play them a whole lot in the early part of the season, but coming down before playoffs.
We were supposed to have 7 more games against Brampton. That's nuts.
7 more games, and there's obviously a big hate for each team. We don't like those guys. They don't like us. It's the Canadian rivalry. We played them in playoffs last year, so there is that bad blood, I guess, to wanting to beat those guys bad. And so with that unknown of not playing them too much this year, they could have been maybe what we would have seen to be our hardest competition. But you look at our division this year, the same as last year, it was tight. A lot of good hockey teams, a lot of good players. But Reading was a good team. They gave us everything we could handle throughout the season, and there were no easy games. You look at the start of the year, and we had the first game where there was a ton of goals, and it was kind of all over the place. And then
that was the banner raising night. You raise the banner, and there's 13 goals scored. What is happening?
Yeah, and they started to change their game to mold it to play against us.
Exactly.
There was a lot of other teams that didn't try to do that. They tried to do things their own way, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm not here saying that this is the rhyme or recipe, but
right.
If you look at the setup of our team, we were the team that to beat out of our division. So Reading was kind of that team that wanted to change their game to beat us, and we had good games, and that was kind of more of the rivalry for me this year, just probably because we haven't played Brampton that much, and we were playing Reading a ton of times. But no matter what, I feel like the playoffs in our division were going to be a battle for sure.
We even go into other buildings in this league, and I've seen people with your face printed out and passed out to a whole section of people. You get booed in buildings where you've played before. Every time you touch the puck in Portland, you hear about it. What's that like, kind of having that reputation, either as a jokester or as a pest on the ice? It seems to follow you around, but you also seem to feed off it.
Yeah, I mean, anytime that the fans are on you or whatever, it is funny, because I don't care, and my game has changed over the years, and I'd like to think that if anybody was to hound me, they should have hounded me 3 or 4 years ago, and now it's just kind of funny, but the boys get a good chuckle out of it after every national anthem. There's people just yelling out, and I sometimes get into it too. I'll get into it with a couple fans and stuff and get a good chuckle, and they get a good chuckle, and it's, as long as it's not taking you off your game, it doesn't matter. But as soon as somebody says something in the crowd and you can hear it through the stadium, the first thing that the other team is thinking is about me.
You're in their head, man. That's free real estate, baby.
And I got a lot of hotels in a lot of guys' heads. I'm paying rent free. So
oh, baby.
It's fun. It's good. Like, nobody really takes it too far or anything like that.
For sure.
It's all in good fun. And like, half the people that say what they do, that you're face to face with them, they're not saying the same things. There's glass and there's gear, and you're feeling real secure, but it's funny when you see the people outside the rink and they don't say too much. But
they lose that confidence
or anything like that. But it's
no.
It's all in good fun. So
it's all a part of the game somehow.
I enjoy it.
Turn it around to maybe some of the lighter moments of the season. I know I asked you before we got on here. I'm like, listen, I'm going to ask you for some kind of stories. You, especially on our first podcast, the Growlers Nation podcast, episode still available on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. You told people love the behind the scenes stories from you. You painted the picture as someone who likes to have a bit of fun on the road, a little bit of a prankster. I will let you share one story that I knew that came out of this year, and I just thought this was hilarious. We were at Boston Airport. I don't remember which trip we were at. I don't know. It was the middle of winter, probably a snowstorm, but you decided to have a little fun with some passerbys. Tell us the story.
Yeah, so I might have played in Rapid City, and we would fly quite a bit, and we would always get dental floss and put, like a $5 bill or whatever, and put it out in the middle of the aisle. And then when somebody come to grab it, we would yank it. So it's kind of funny that it was, I want to say, like 3 or 4 road trips in a row where I was trying to find non-wax dental floss, but in the airports all they sell is wax, and I'm assuming it might be for that reason of, like, you can actually see it. So it was like 3 or 4 road trips for sure where it was like I couldn't find anything, and then we were in Maine, and I think they had a sewing kit, so I looked into it. They had like white line. I'm like, perfect. White thread. I'm like, this is going to be excellent. So there's a couple different lengths of it. There's like white, there's black, there's gold. I got them all tied together, and boys are losing it. And we're in kind of a good spot, I guess, for it, because all the team was kind of sat in the same amount of seats in this like little nook, and it was right on the corner. And I ended up rigging it all up, putting it out on the floor. And the first couple, it didn't really work out as the way I wanted it to. But then I got a couple people just bad trying to reach down and grab it. The boys were a little laughing there.
I was sitting alongside with like my phone tucked, trying to be inconspicuous. I'm not going to be the guy to ruin this. And I remember you wouldn't expect it to be so funny because it's a classic. No one's ever going to fall for that.
I guess if you see money, like, why wouldn't you try to pick it up? It's. And I forget I think it was only $1 bill because I was like, I'm not putting anything bigger because if it was me and somebody was doing it to me, I'd step on the bill and I'd take it. That's it. Sorry about
Absolutely, 100%.
But we had a couple people, that were just hilarious. All the boys were crying, laughing, and just I think the funniest part was just like the anticipation of like people coming and everybody like getting ready for it. And
here he comes. Be cool.
And nobody's like looking. And then all of a sudden, like somebody passes by and you're like, how'd they miss it? And, it was hilarious. And I mean, for me, it's little stuff like that, but it keeps things light,
It's important.
I just like being that kind of jokester too, where, keep things light, like I said. And luckily there was no sock bandit this year, but probably would have got pegged on me again.
We had Marcus Power on an earlier episode and we asked him about it. And I'm like, Marcus, how's all your socks this year? He's like, they're fine. Next question. So I think he thought it was was it Matt Bradley at the end of the day?
Yeah, it was Brad's.
Friggin' Brad's by 5-1 win over the Manchester Monarchs to finish off that series in 6 games. What do you remember about that series and that game? That final game at home, Obi had the hat trick. Everything went the Growlers' way, really starting to peak. What do you remember about that series and closing that one out?
I think, the series in whole, we were happy to see that they beat Adirondack because it is no secret we had a tough time playing at Adirondack all season. And, when you see Manchester that we had a track record of doing very well against it, we were happy to see that. Now, no matter who we played, we felt confident that we were going to be able to win the series. Stuff of that nature, but we wanted to finish it in Manchester. You play in Exeter, we're playing in a practice rink. It's an unorthodox way of like
a weird day.
Should be. It was just a weird thing. And, they scored in, was it overtime?
Yep. To pass out from behind the net and just one of those goals.
Yeah. Just such an unlucky bounce. And, they thought they had everything in grasp, but we knew like coming back to mile one, it was a different, not so much a different mindset, but you could feel it, like when we were in our own building, we were a dangerous team. And, obviously Obi in the playoffs that he had,
unreal.
When it comes down to big times of the year, your big time players show up, and when it comes to ending a series to have a hat trick and just kind of take it by yourself is huge. But the special part for us was we had 10 forwards and the guys that weren't playing all could have been that player. So it was very unique. But no, we were ecstatic to head and take on Florida. Now
that it's essentially been a year, kind of a silly question and a hard one to answer maybe, but what's different now that you've had a year to look back on the championship and winning at home and for yourself wearing the C and all of that, different than say when we last caught up for like one of these lengthy chats for the podcast back in October? Obviously you've had an extra 6 months or however long it's been to soak it all in. How is it maybe different now? What are you feeling now, maybe compared to when it all first happened? Sum it all up.
Yeah, it definitely took a while to sink in because you win and it's a feeling that you can't put into words or anything. It's a special time, man. Like, you get out on the ice and stuff like that, but when you finally get in the dressing room, you kind of take that deep breath, and everything is, you're the top of the leaderboard and the champions of the year. It's an amazing feeling, but there's a couple weeks after where it's just absolute madness, and guys are having a really good time, and you lose track of how special it is. You don't really take a whole lot of time to sit back and go through things, and obviously, for me, getting close to that playoff time and knowing how fun it is, when games are so meaningful, and for us, the weather is getting better. It's getting nice.
Finally.
And you're playing games. You're not practicing as much. You're getting in that groove, and the focus gets turned up. The games are amplified. That's kind of when it kind of sunk in a little bit more for me. Like, heading up to playoff time, just being, like, this is a feeling I want to have again. And that's kind of,
I miss it so much. It's devastating. James, I don't know if it's too early to ask this question, but kind of what's next for you? When do you think about keeping in shape and looking forward to what next season may bring? Kind of what's next for you, or just getting by a day at a time here?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's still unknown about what's going to happen next year. And, as of right now, I've been doing some workouts, but not trying to amp it up too much. I've worked a couple of weeks. Yeah, I've worked a couple of weeks here and there, kind of doing the same thing I did last summer, working with my dad, and hopefully get some more work if stuff kind of dies down with the COVID and regulations. And for me, it's just keeping busy. Hopefully we get some nice weather, and trying to stay outside and just occupy your time with being productive, and not completely just sitting on the couch all day and doing nothing. But there obviously are days that we have no choice because of the weather. And but as far as been doing a lot of going out and walking around. Like I said before, just got my rollerblade set up, going. I brought my skates down to Kachi and got them to hook me up. And
nice.
Yeah, outside of that, it's just try to stay in good spirits. Obviously, it's
for sure. That's a full-time job these days.
Right now. Yeah, not an easy time for anybody right now, but it's trying to keep mentally strong and keep pushing forward. And at some point in time, hopefully sooner rather than later, all this madness will end, and we can get a big thing figured out with this virus going on.
How are you holding up? Everyone safe and sound at home?
Yeah, everything's good. I'm back in Olds, Alberta, just outside of Calgary right now. Kind of the abrupt end to our season. They rushed us back out of Germany, right back into Canada as soon as possible. But my family was back at home already. So it was actually, I wasn't expecting to get back until probably May 1st. But the family was excited to have me back almost 2 months early. So it was to have to quarantine with your wife and kids for 2 weeks.
I know, it's terrible, right?
It's kind of just what the doctor ordered. So I can't complain. Life's pretty good right now.
And before we go any further, on behalf of all of us who remembered what you did for us here in St. John's, congratulations on a heck of a professional career. Just summed it all up with your final season in Munich with the Red Bull. I mean, kind of sum it up for us, now that you're, not too far removed from the playing career now, but you've got it. You should be very happy with the career you've managed to pave for yourself.
Yeah, the last year and a half for me or the last 2 years was a little bit of a struggle. I was going through a little bit of a hip injury, and I ended up having hip surgery at the end of last season. And so I didn't know whether or not I was going to be able to kind of end my career the way I wanted to, healthy on the ice and playing well. And luckily, I had a great surgery, seen some great doctors, kind of got back to where I needed to be to end my career on the ice and scoring goals and being productive. And that's just what I did for my last 3-4 months of the season. It was incredible. It was a great way to kind of end the season, other than the playoffs being canceled and because of the coronavirus. So it was kind of a catch-22 where, yeah, it was great to be back and healthy and be able to retire when on the ice, but not knowing that it was going to be my last game and the season coming to an abrupt halt was a tough way to retire also.
5 years you were with Red Bull Munich, 3 championships. You were named their player of the year this year. Talk about the difference, I guess, between playing North American hockey. You left St. John's and headed right to Munich for the next part of your journey, I guess. Kind of sum up the main differences and maybe what was most challenging for yourself.
Well, I think the biggest challenge going over there was getting my family comfortable. Anybody that knows me in St. John's knows that I put a lot of emphasis to where I play according to where my family is going to be comfortable. Both my kids were in school. My son, it was his first year of school. So not only am I changing locations, moving the family across the world, but my son's going to an international school in Munich for the first time in his life.
Wow.
So I was very fortunate to sign with the Red Bulls in Munich. The team was very well run. They had lost out in the first round of the playoffs the year before, so they kind of went through a little bit of a shakeup, bringing in a lot new import faces. And I was lucky enough to fall into a city where there's a lot of English being spoken. My head coach was from Kansas City. My assistant coach was from Minneapolis. So I really didn't know what to expect going over there. I didn't know if everybody was going to be speaking German, if I was going to be a stud going over there, or if I was going to be a dud. There's great players that go from North America, go over to Europe, and just can't make it click. The ice is bigger, the players are different, the coaching's different, and I went over there and I scored. I still hold the DEL record. I scored 8 goals in my first 8 games to start my first season.
No big deal.
Yeah, and so it was. I just kind of took off right from the start, and I won Player of the Month in my first month over there. And we that was the first season. Not only was it my first championship, but it was Red Bull Munich's first championship.
That's
so
awesome.
It was a huge deal. It was a huge deal. Something that once I put my career highlights kind of on a list, that first championship is always there, right? That first championship, being able to lift that cup, the parties, the celebrations, the parades after. Watching the Growlers win a couple of years after we won was exciting, but also sad for me, because I know how close we were in 2013 and 2014, and how crazy that season was, and how crazy the fans would have been if we would have been able to beat Texas in the final. So it was. I'm still in a group chat with a bunch of the old IceCap guys: Blair Riley, John Albert, Zach Redmond, all those guys. We still stay in touch. We actually had a reunion last year at Blair Riley's cabin in
No
all IceCap guys. Even Scott McLeod, our trainer, showed up for it.
way. My invitation must have got lost in the mail. I guess so. Now that gives a perfect opportunity to do a bit of a deep dive into your IceCaps memories here. What I want to know is, before you even set foot in the great province of Newfoundland and Labrador, the team was just kind of cooking. You were, at that time, I believe, on an NHL deal with Winnipeg. But what was the conversation like when you first found out, all right, you're going to go and be the captain of this brand new team as far east as you can go in this continent without getting wet? What was your reaction, and what was maybe your first thoughts about coming to Newfoundland?
Well, first of all, I know a couple of really good friends of mine are Newfies. Guys over here, a lot of people travel back and forth, and they've married a couple Alberta girls, and they've stayed over here. So, I mean, I know two guys that I just call Noof. Like that's their name, right? So I've heard all about these provinces, that this province in Canada that I've never traveled to. I mean, unless you have a reason to go to Newfoundland, not a lot of people make it a vacation spot or go there.
Exactly.
And when I talk to people now, I say, if you get a chance, go to this province. Go to this city, experience this city, because it is like no other. It is something where you can go in and you feel like you're in a different country, because the people speak differently, they treat you differently, and really you can go around and travel around St. John's for 3-4 days, and you will have the absolute time of your life. It is, and that's what I tell people. And I know it's not cheap to get to St. John's, because you got to fly over there, you got to connect flights, stuff like that. But it's a city that I had an absolute blast in. And I mean, like you said, when I got that first phone call from Keith McCambridge, was our head coach at the time, and he said that I was going to be captain of the team. It was a very cool experience, because I was always a leader for my teams, but I always played under Nolan Baumgartner, Mike Keane, or these big famous leaders that I learned a ton from, but I never got to wear that C on my jersey. So when Keith McCambridge called me into his office and said, you're going to be the St. John's IceCaps first ever captain, I mean, it still makes the hair stand up on my arms. It was a very cool experience.
Do you have any favorite coast stories or moments in the ECHL? Because especially when you were coming through, I mean, you mentioned it, that wasn't yesterday. I'm not trying to age you by any stretch, but the league was certainly different. These are long bus trips. These are, I mean, it's the not so pretty side maybe of professional hockey. Do you have any like true gritty coast stories?
You know what? I wish I knew the tough guy's name that I had in Wheeling with me. He was in those battles in they had him on TV in the summer. I can't even remember what they were called. They were held in British Columbia. It was just literally Battle of the Fists, or I can't remember what it was called. But he was on our team in Wilkes-Barre, and our coach had called me in. He said, "Hey, I see you're getting pushed around a little bit out there. We're going to bring in this guy to kind of help protect you." And I was like, "Hey, like, more the merrier." Like, I mean, in East Coast hockey,
bring him on.
It's kind of open game.
That's par for the course for sure.
I'm after you, sure. And so they brought in this guy, and one guy whacked me off the opening faceoff the one game. The next game we played him, he didn't even look. He didn't even ask the guy to fight. Jumped him off the draw and just said, "That one's for Jaffery." And this guy ended up being one of my best buddies. I mean, same with another guy in Wheeling, TJ Reynolds. He was an all-time East Coaster. He was a captain down in, I think, in Greenville for a long time. But this guy, he took care of me. There was guys that, I mean, they knew that I was one of the top players on the team. And this guy, I mean, if a guy ran me over, if they were taking exception to me, guys like this protected me and let me keep doing what I could do. And I remember going to the bar after the game for a beer, and I would just pick up this guy's bar tab and just be like, "This guy took a couple punches in the face for me tonight. I got his beers, or they're on me."
Damn right. I love that.
And there was the guy, I can't remember the guy's name from Wheeling. It's going to come to me after I hang up with you. But this guy he wasn't just tough. He was crazy. Like, he was crazy tough. And I remember he came over to our place, and I said, "Hey, I just need to run to the gas station. Can I borrow your car?" And so he's like, yeah, threw me the keys. And I went down to go run to the gas station. I jumped in the car and I could barely move the steering wheel. And I'm like, man, like something's wrong here. I'm not pushing a button. I'm in the wrong gear. Like I'm checking the safety brake, whatever. And I get to the gas station. I come back. My arms are sore just from turning the steering wheel. And I'm like, I go back up there. I throw the guy the keys, and I'm like, what's up with your car? Like I can barely move your steering wheel. He's like, yeah, I took all the power steering fluid out of my car so I could work on my arm muscles as I drive. What? I'm thinking, this guy is absolutely absurd, like absolutely absurd. But he was that guy that when he was on the ice, you kept your head down and you did not say a word. This guy was, I remember going to the gym with him and there'd be a punching bag there that had huge signs that say no kicking the bag. And this guy was running drop kicks and tackling this bag. And like, there's stories that, in the East Coast Hockey League, a lot of the teams, the owners own apartment buildings, and then they put the whole team in the apartment building because it's cheaper for them. And
exactly.
And so, the amount of stories that came out of there, gym stories, and it was just, that's why I tell people, I said, every player should have to play at least a few months, maybe a season down the East Coast Hockey League, because yeah, it was probably the lowest hockey I played because I moved up to the AHL and NHL after.
Sure.
But it was one of the funnest couple of seasons that I ever had. You enjoy the game. There's no pressure. Everybody's having a good time. And it was just hockey at its finest. It was literally hockey at its finest, where for the love of the game, it was guys, there was no pressure to, oh yeah, there's scouts in the stands here. There's scouts. If I score a hat trick tonight, I'm going to get called up. There was none of that for me. I played because I loved the game. I was happy to be playing as a professional. I was happy to be getting $500 a week. I was ecstatic. Like it was, you're telling me you're going to play hockey? Like that was the point where I was at in my first couple of years. Like I can do this and not have another job. Like sign me up.
Sign me up.
Exactly. Right. So
I have to ask, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, given your connection, obviously a true one here to the province. What was your reaction when you heard St. John's was getting a team back? It was an ECHL team, a place where you did spend a couple of years, and then not just coming back, but the Growlers winning a championship in the inaugural season, bringing home a championship. Unfortunately, no American League team in this city could do. Kind of what was your reaction? Did that find its way to your radar? I know you were obviously busy and overseas and all that, but kind of what was your reaction?
I was following it all year, honestly, awesome. Through the playoffs. I connect all their Twitter and their Facebook and everything. And I followed it. And actually, when they won, I had trained when I was in St. John's. I trained with Zach O'Brien a little bit. I sent him a message, congrats. And like I said, congrats on the championship. Wish we could have done the same, but glad to see that you guys did it this way. And I was actually one of my second or third years pro. I played with Ryan Clough. And
I was gonna about that at 03-04 with Cleveland. Am I right?
Yeah. And he was a lineman. I played with him and Marcel Gotch for 20, 25 minutes that year. And we were the worst team in the league, but we were all young. We were all kind of building our careers from there. And we were the top line at the time, but I think we won 16, 17 games all season that year. But now you look back at it and you're like, wow, that team was filled with NHL players. And we had kind of, I shouldn't say they worked up in the East Coast Hockey League because they were NHL draft picks and stuff. But I had worked up from a year in Roanoke was my first year, and 2 years in Wheeling, West Virginia, which I was very successful in every year that I had played in the East Coast Hockey League. So I kind of had that connection of the East Coast. And knowing what kind of hockey it is. I know some people, when they talk about the East Coast Hockey League, are like, oh, no, that's not great hockey. And I'm like, well, pump the brakes here. Like, I've played here for 3 years. And, it might drop off the last couple of players, but it is still great hockey. Every great player, there's a lot of great players that worked up from the East Coast Hockey League and worked their way through the American League, like myself. Just some guys that I talked to recently in Alexander Burrows, who's got his number up in the Vancouver Canucks arena now, like East Coast guy that I battled with for years for my first couple of years. And Michael McKenna, a guy that just a goalie that just
Great
retired.
example.
He's an East Coast guy that battled his way up through the system also. And I tell people now, I said every hockey player should have to play a year in the East Coast Hockey League.
Just last night, the American Hockey League on their YouTube channel showed Game 5 of the 2014 Calder Cup Finals. Were you aware, and would you have watched it?
Oh, that's a tough question. Because I had a chance to score in overtime in that game, and I don't know if I really wanted to see that again. So I would have definitely watched it. I was not aware that it was on. I would have definitely watched it. Like I said, that group of players, guys like Brennan Kishton, Jordan Hill, John Albert, guys that I still stay in contact to this day. That was such a special group. And I know we lost out in the finals, but that group was almost, it feels like a group that I won with because we've stayed so close over the years.
That's awesome.
I would have definitely watched it. I would have given Jordan Hill a hard time for getting dangled on the overtime goal, but hopefully he's not watching this right now. But
I'll make sure to text him later. He's one of the few guys from that team I kept up with, so I'll be sure to play the snitch there for you. I kind of want to go through that bit of a run there on this day in St. John's IceCaps history. 6 years ago to the day, 1-0 win in Game 3 over the Albany Devils. Cale Mullarat had the only goal, and Michael Hutchinson had the shutout. How good's your memory? Do you remember anything about that game?
I don't remember that game. I remember Hutchinson being an absolute wall for us, though.
Unreal, hey?
He was, you know what? We had a great team that year, but when he went from the East Coast Hockey League, like backup goalie, to being our starter at Christmas, I'm not even really sure what happened to. I think Pasquale was our starter at the time, but he had a knee injury, was out for the season, and we really had to lean on somebody to kind of pick up the slack. And I think it was one of his first games. He came in and absolutely, I think we only lost a handful of games after Christmas for the rest of the season. Like we were definitely the best team in the league at that time from Christmas on. And throughout the playoffs, I remember. I don't remember the Albany series a ton. I remember the Norfolk series a ton, though. I remember, was it John Gibson was the goalie then?
I was going to say, because he was standing on his head, and then he got called up.
Yeah, Anaheim was in the playoffs, and their goalie went down. I can't remember which goalie theirs went down, but that was, you could have flipped a coin whether or not they were going to beat us, or, I mean, they had some studs on that team. I can't remember exactly who they had, but John Gibson was their guy. And I remember Game 1 and Game 2, he absolutely stood on his head. And I think we snuck out one game. They beat us one game. And then I think he got called up for Game 3 or Game 4. I can't remember what it was. And that was just the what we needed to be able to get by them. It was, that was probably the toughest series other than the finals, I thought.
Wow.
In my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. I don't disagree.
But when you run into a goalie of that caliber, you see what he's doing for the Ducks now. You just hope to sneak a game out here or there because he can steal a game or two for them. And that's what he was doing. And then we just got lucky enough that he got called up at the time and we kind of took over. I think that was my last ever playoff goal was against John Gibson. I remember.
All right. Well, if you're going to go out, might as well get one by him.
Exactly. So it was. I have a pretty good recollection of that goal. I remember who we had played throughout the 4 series, and I remember that Texas team just being phenomenal. Though they had a lot of good young studs, and I still guys like Ransford, or he played in the DEL this year in Berlin, and I still have every time I get to finish a check on a guy, I kind of give a little extra to him just because I remember him back in the day being a little bit of a rat for Texas and playing very well against us. So. And
that very same year, the American Hockey League hosted the All-Star Game in St. John's. You were not only on that team, you were its captain. Some of that experience. What an unreal year that was for St. John's, for the IceCaps, and I assume for yourself.
It was an absolute. I remember going home for the summer and just thinking, I could quit now and be happy for the rest of my life. Like, that was I mean, yeah, I didn't get the Calder Cup, but I was captain of the All-Star game. Not only captain of the All-Star game, but in front of my own fans. And then, I mean, the skills competition, I got to tie up the game with in the breakaway competition, tie it up to send it to extra shooters. And then I thought to myself, you know what? I don't want to do anything more. This is exactly how I want this to end. So I sent Hoffman. I sent, I can't remember the other, the big Toronto Marlies defenseman. I sent like 3 of our studs to go shoot. They all missed. And all of Sweden's shooters all missed. And I was like, all right, I mean, I need to get here.
Can't find any good help. I'll have to do it myself.
And so I was like, okay, great. I'm going to jump back in here, see what I can do. And lucky enough, I put her under the bar on their goalie, and it was definitely a storybook ending. And I mean, I was in the fastest skater. I was a 32-year-old going against a 17-year-old at the time. And
that's right.
ended up winning that. I was in the accuracy competition. I think I went 4 targets and 6 shots or something along those lines. So everything kind of fell into line.
No
I had my
kidding.
son on the bench. I mean, the video kept going from Sportsnet to my Jackson on the bench, and he's 3 years old with his fingers up.
That's awesome.
He's got the mohawk. Like, it was just everything that could have went right that season, other than the Calder Cup.
Right.
Went exactly the way I wanted it. My family was comfortable. My wife had a great job working at Key City Gymnastics in St. John's. Awesome. And my daughter was so happy in school. And it just, yeah, it was, my 4 years in St. John's were absolutely phenomenal. So I'm in Wheeling, my second year in Wheeling, and I signed a one-way contract with Wheeling. So any team in the league, in the AHL, can call me up. So the previous season, I was with Wilkes-Barre. They never had any injuries. I had a phenomenal season, but if nobody has any injuries, you're not going to get called up. So I decided with my agent and with my family that I was going to take a little bit less money. I'm going to sign a one-way East Coast deal, so anybody in the league could call me up if they need a player. Because I had spent 2 very successful seasons in the East Coast Hockey League, and really had only played a handful of games.
Yeah, it's time to go up here.
Yeah. So, and I knew my soon-to-be wife was graduating from university, and I was starting to feel the pressure of possible marriage or bringing her. And honestly, with the East Coast back then, $500 a week to bring your wife with you, I mean, it's just makes it a little bit tougher, right? So a couple months into that season, I get called up from Cleveland, and that's when I get on the line with Marcel Gotch, Ryan Clough. Things just start clicking, and things are just going well. And this is the lockout season in 2004, whatever the lockout
04, 05 was the lockout year. That's right.
And so things are going well. I'm on their top line, top power play unit, and that's the season that Edmonton has the Edmonton Roadrunners as their AHL team, because the Oilers weren't playing. They never had the Western Hockey League team at that time. Oh, yeah. And so that's only a couple hours from my hometown. So my parents and friends, it's the first time to be able to see me play pro hockey. They decide we got 60 tickets for that game, right? Like, so day before we fly out, Cleveland GM calls me into his office and says, Jason, we're going to have to send you down. And I'm honestly looking around thinking I'm on a camp.
Yeah, where's Ashton Kutcher? I'm getting punked right now.
There's no way they're sending down their first line left winger right now. I mean, not only are we one of the worst teams in the league, if you send me down, you're gonna hear it from all the media and stuff. And so I'm like, no, like, what's happening? Like, he goes, I've let your visa expire. Not only do you have to leave the team, but you have to leave the country. And so as he says that, my heart just drops. This is my first opportunity. I finally made the AHL. I'm on a team. I'm settled in on a team. I'm successful. We're talking with San Jose about a possible contract. And now you tell me not only can I not play for you, but I have to leave the country. And so I remember leaving that arena that night in tears. I was crying. I was thinking, my hockey career's done. I mean, at this point, we had Hamilton, Manitoba, and St. John's were in the AHL. But I wasn't an established player. I wasn't, or in Edmonton also. I wasn't an established AHL player. I wasn't, and I was on the worst team in the league. Nobody was going to give me a chance with their team, especially during the lockout when you're
the talent pool's a lot thicker.
And so I literally drove back to Wheeling. My coach in Wheeling is, so pissed off he could barely even speak to me because he's just lost his top potential player that he was hoping to get back at some time throughout the season. I pack up my apartment. I just start driving north to Winnipeg. And I'm on the phone with my agent. I'm on the phone with my girlfriend, with my mom at the time. And I'm like, the only saving grace I had was Victoria had East Coast hockey team at that time. And I was my East Coast stats have been very good. They will take me. But that wasn't the point. The point was I was losing my chance in the AHL.
Right.
And so I was driving north, and I was a couple hours into my trip, and I get a phone call from Craig Heisinger, who St. John's knows as the GM of and he goes, Jason Jaffery, this is Craig Heisinger, GM of the Manitoba Moose. He goes, I got a couple players sick tonight. Can you be in Hamilton for 7:30? And at that time, I had the little screen GPS on the front of my
where were you?
Ford Explorer, and I punch it in, and it says I got it's 2:00 in the afternoon. It says it's going to be like a 7-hour drive, and I say I'll be there.
Hell yeah!
And I flip a Yui on the highway, and I just start driving the other direction. And I'm Ford Explorer at this time. That is,
you can probably move a good clip.
Yeah. Shouldn't be going 180, but it's going 180 down the road. And I had a gas station sub for my
pregame.
I get into Cops Coliseum in Hamilton as the team's coming off the ice from. I didn't have time to get into a suit, so I'm in jeans, backwards hat, literally throw my hockey bag over my shoulder, and I stroll into the dressing room, and these guys Lee Gorin and a couple of the veterans start writing fines up there, like no tie, $100, missed warm up, $100, and just starts writing all these fines up on the board. And I'm just happy to be there. I've been in a car for 7 hours now. My legs are stiff as a board. I don't get to go out for warm up. So I throw on my gear and I'm out there for the first shift of the game. Well, it's a nationally televised Sportsnet game, Hamilton, Manitoba. So my family does get to watch me back home, but just on TV. We end up losing 3-1, but I scored the only goal.
Stop it. How does the story keep going?
I know. And so I scored the only goal. Alexander Burrows, we were both kind of rookies. He passed it from the corner. I tapped. It wasn't pretty, but I tapped it in back door. Got third star of the game. And after the game, I still hadn't really realized what was going to happen in the future. If I had a spot on this team, what was going to happen. If this is a one-game thing, I was going to fly back or jump in my vehicle and drive back to Calgary, or what was going to happen. And it just so happened after the game, Craig Heisinger came up to me, said, hey, he's like, I'm going to fly somebody in to drive your vehicle home. He's like, you're on the team flight with us tomorrow.
No.
And 5 years or 3 years later, I'm playing for the Vancouver Canucks. That was the absolute
unreal.
That was the phone call that absolutely changed my life. And when I retired a couple months ago or a month ago, I called Craig Heisinger and I just said, I just want to thank you for it. That was the time that absolutely made my career. I thought my career was done. Not only was forced to leave the country, visa problems, all this kinds of stuff, into playing for the Manitoba Moose. I didn't get to play in the playoffs that year, but the year later, I've had 50 points. 2 years later, I had 85 points and had an NHL contract on my lap. And season after that, I scored in my first NHL game. It was everything kind of rolled from there. And Craig Heisinger, he just says, no, he's like, stop it. Stop talking. He goes, you're the one that took advantage of your opportunities. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I did, but without the opportunity, you never know what would have happened.
Bingo.
And so that's always a story I love to tell people. Right when you think that you're at the all-time bottom of your career and it might not get any worse, I was thinking I'm going to go home and drive a fertilizer truck for my dad's farming company.
It's a living.
Boom. All of a sudden, 2-3 years later, I'm a Vancouver Canuck living the absolute dream, what everybody thinks about every day. So
I got to ask, a quick look down that roster. Chloe ended up an ECHL head coach. Nick Bootland, head coach of the Kalamazoo Wings. Riley Armstrong, head coach of the Maine Mariners. Jason Jaffery?
You know what? Riley Armstrong sent me a message the other day trying to get me to come down to remain with them. So you never know. I mean,
I hope you turned him down for the sake of your Newfoundland brethren.
I told him, I said, you know what, I would love to stay in the game eventually. Obviously, this COVID-19 situation is kind of
sure.
into everybody's plans. Everybody's kind of back on the back burner, not really knowing what's going on. But I've been able to spend a lot of quality, good time with my family here over the last months, which has been great. And eventually I see my wife getting sick of me and telling me to go find a job somewhere else because she's used to me traveling so much. But
that's right.
You never know. I stay in contact. That's one thing throughout my hockey career is I never burned any bridges. I tried to stay in contact with as many people as in all the places I played as possible. I mean, I still send Danny Williams a message every once in a while just to say hi, up, and even I still got a lot of good friends in St. John's. That I think my wife's best friend is still in St. John's.
No way.
Say hi to the Susies if they're listening. It's yeah. Awesome. I hope to get a chance to return one day, and
please do.
It would be great to come and watch a Growlers game and maybe drop a puck at one of the games or something like that. Would be a cool experience.
Oh, don't tease us, Jeff. Don't tease us. I think that's going to do it. We've already taken you along here tonight. Again, on behalf of everyone in the St. John's hockey community, thank you for all of your tireless work for us on and off the ice during your time here in St. John's. Congratulations again on a wonderful career. And Jason Jaffery, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
The following program is brought to you by Rogers Anyplace TV. Enjoy exclusive content for free. Visit RogersAnyplaceTV.com.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.